Hi, how are you all? Hello, hello. How's everyone doing? You good? So I just wanted to share with you something little, something small today. I wanted to share with you a couple of signs and a couple of symptoms that you may not realize are actually due to low cortisol. And the only reason that I figured this out was because I tested my cortisol. I test my hormones. I tested my thyroid, I tested my estrogens, I tested my progesterone, my testosterone, my DHEA, did all my bloods, I did my B12, I did everything, absolutely everything. And I try and do it, once a year, if not more, when it comes to my hormones, because I know that my hormones are sensitive, and when I get stressed or when I eat the wrong foods, they tend to be out of balance. So I tested them. Well, this time around, I tested them and my cortisol was actually quite low. I was surprised because I'd been looking after myself. I'd been trying to not get up as early. I'd been trying to start the day with yoga instead of going straight to work. I did have a couple of years where I was getting up at, I was doing the miracle morning, so I was getting up at 4:30 a.m. and getting on with the day. And that actually made me sick. That was back in 2014. That was just way too early. So getting up early can actually, getting up that early actually caused a lot of inflammation and issues. And I actually got a lot of chest infections getting up that early. So I don't get up as early anymore. I get up around between 5 and 6, which is perfect for me. Any earlier than that, then my body's not having enough chance to heal. But what's interesting about some of the signs and symptoms, and I wanted to run them past you just to let you know that maybe this could indicate low cortisol for you. So, some of the symptoms. One of the symptoms is black under the eye. So, getting dark around here. So, this kind of dark ring, get it on the inside and then it might come down a little bit. You see that? You can see mine a little bit. I definitely noticed over this last year going a little bit darker there. And so that makes sense. So that was that low cortisol. And you'll also notice that in people that suddenly get tired. It's your kid, it's your toddler. Maybe they suddenly get tired. If you've had a fright and your adrenaline spikes and then suddenly it bottoms out, you might notice that. Or if towards the end of the day you get tired, you might also notice that. At the same time, you might get dehydrated. But that was something that I noticed from the low cortisol. Another thing that low cortisol can cause is a strange feeling. It feels like a bit like depression, but it's not depression. It's kind of like an apathy, fatigue, low mood. And maybe you think something's wrong. Maybe you think you've got depression and you think, oh, what's wrong with me? Why am I feeling like this? It's just crazy. I can't get out of this mood. But often it can be the low cortisol, particularly if there is extreme fatigue. And fatigue with low cortisol, especially when the thyroid is involved, it can be that fatigue where you're so apathetic. You know how sometimes you're tired and you can still do stuff. You're really tired, you've got a lot to do. You're tired, it's okay, you get on and do stuff. But then there are other times when you're just so tired you just can't be bothered to do anything. There's actually you can't even put the toast in the toaster, that kind of tired. And that can cause a feeling of depression, which feels like depression, but it can be low cortisol. So look out for that. If you've been getting those funny moods, those very, very low moods, look out for those because they could, it could be that low cortisol. Thirdly, low cortisol causes this bizarre underlying immune issues with the body. It could be kind of flare-ups of thrush. It could be fungal infections. It could be little flare-ups of mouth infections. For me, I was having a really bizarre thing happen in my left eye. It started back in the beginning of the year, and I just couldn't figure it out. And it felt like kind of pressure, and it felt like something was in my left eye, and it was kind of like gritty. And at first I thought, oh gosh, I've got an eye problem. And they looked at my eyes were fine. Anyway, what it is and what low cortisol can cause, this kind of underlying infections, things will keep coming back. So whether it's this little bit of a throat infection, for me it was this weird gritty eye feeling. For others it might be this underlying cold or sinus or this little ear infection. So it's a small infection that never really goes away. It's like underlying, comes back, goes, comes back, goes, come back, goes, but it's not like a full-on flu or full-on cold, that kind of thing. So just look out for that with little inklings that come back, you know, these little things that come back, because that can indicate low cortisol. Another one, I'm just going through the list that I wanted to talk about. Another one is headaches. Okay, so low cortisol can cause aching headaches. And you'll get it particularly if you do exercise, you go on a long walk or you go on a run and you come back and it's kind of like this aching headache here. It's above your eyes, it's real achy. Not like a migraine, but achy where you really can't do anything and you get quite fatigued. And that can be due to the low cortisol as well. So look out for that one. Now, what's interesting is if your headache is due to low cortisol, there's a hack. And the hack is salt in water. It's a glass of water with about 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt, Himalayan sea salt, river salt, or some kind of good salt that's got no aluminium, not your regular table salt. So about 1/4 teaspoon of that in a small glass of water. You drink it down. Now, if your headache goes, that's a real good indication that it's due to either low cortisol or low blood pressure. So look out for that one. What I find now, do you know what? I had this, okay, jumping ahead. So low cortisol can cause a dehydration. When your cortisol's low, you do lose minerals. You lose sodium, potassium, all of those minerals. Now, here's what I noticed. I was noticing that I was going on long walks. I was doing a walk for about 1.5 hours, 2 hours a day. I was going on these long walks. And what I was noticing was the end of the walk, I had a headache. Now, I assumed the headache was to do with my back. So I went to my chiro. My chiro did a few things. He said, oh, yeah, you'll be better. And yep, the next day I was better. Now, this went on for a couple of months and I just couldn't figure it out. Anyway, my results came back from my low cortisol and still I didn't put 2 and 2 together. And then I watched Platoon. I watched the movie Platoon, and in it, Charlie Sheen, they're in the Vietnam jungle, and Charlie Sheen is sweating and getting really, really dizzy. He's getting so dizzy, he's not feeling that great, and the medics have to see to him. And he wants to drink water, and the medics are like, no, don't drink water, you'll have like a salt dump, you'll dump your salts. And suddenly, it just kind of like, it was like a light bulb moment for me with a low cortisol. I realised what I'd been doing is I'd been over hydrating on my walks. So I was having filtered water, really good quality filtered water, on an 1.5 hour, 2 hour walk in like 25-degree weather. I was sweating, I had a backpack on, I was sweating. I was drinking about 1 litre to 1.5 litres of filtered water, so good quality filtered water. So I just didn't put 2 and 2 together. Anyway, then I went on a walk after that. When I had the low cortisol, I went on a walk after that, and I took 500 ml, just on the same walk, I took a 500 ml bottle of water, not my 1.5 litres, 500 ml. I put a whole heaped teaspoon of salt in it, and I sipped on that on the walk, and it's amazing. I didn't get a headache, haven't had a headache since. My energy is fantastic. And it just goes to show how much actually just water, if you're sweating and you're losing your electrolytes, and especially if you've got low cortisol, how much water can dehydrate and you can lose your mineral salts. So if you do exercise daily, if you've got low cortisol, if you do infrared sauna, if you sweat a lot, you need to be replacing your salts with salted water, potassium from a little bit of orange juice mixed with water. You need to be adding things to your water, and that's going to support your cortisol levels, and it's going to stop you salt dumping as well. When we talk about salts, we don't just talk about sodium, potassium salts, magnesium salts, calcium salts. So it's important that you're getting these salts up as well, particularly with low cortisol, because low cortisol causes you to excrete your salts, you're more dehydrated, you're more salt deficient, then you get your low blood pressure, then you get your dizziness, then you get your headaches. So you can see exactly what happened. And I have to tell you, since I've started my salt in water, I have 1/4 teaspoon of salt in water twice a day now. I actually feel really good, and it's getting my salts up, but it's also getting my cortisol up as more. So that took me on to one of the last ones I wanted to talk about, was the dizziness. So the dizziness on standing, dizziness in the morning, kind of like this faint kind of feeling in your head, that can also be to low cortisol as well. So If you have the salt in water and it helps your symptoms, you know most likely it's the low cortisol, and you can go on doing that. So the salt in water is fantastic for low cortisol, but also vitamin C. So what I did, I actually did about 3 weeks of my vitamin C protocol. So I just took Blackmore's regular 1000 milligrams of Bio-C, and I took about 8 to 10 of those a day, and I just did those for a couple of weeks. So really high dose vitamin C to buffer my cortisol, because my cortisol was low. That, along with the salt in water, were a big game changer for me. So just those symptoms and signs to look out for. We've got the darkening under the eyes, we've got the headaches, particularly when you exercise or when you do things like an infrared sauna, or when you're in the sun and you get these aching headaches. We've got the low moods, a little bit like depression, dizziness, faintness, thirst. What else was there? And underlying infections as well. You know, these small infections that keep coming back. All of these are little symptoms and signs that maybe you've got low cortisol. So you can either test or experiment with salt in water and vitamin C and see how you feel. So I hope that was helpful. It sure helped me, particularly the hydration. And coming into summer, it's important to make sure that you are replenishing your salts and not just overhydrating with regular water. So I hope that was helpful, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.